in age. And I have stayed home by myself a lot with my thoughts. And I pray that someday we'll all meet again. Small, but things like that presses on children's minds a lot. But I can remember that evening. It was real hazy, like the sky was in darkness, sort of like dark gray color. And I remember the bay being dry. And there was just down the middle of it, there was a streak of water where the channel was, just a little streak of water. The rest was sandbars, all on each side. And I thought, I know that there was a lot of blue herons, cranes out there. My daddy went out there and shot them. That was before the storm hit. And a good while before it hit. And they used to take the breast, they had big breasts, and they used to make what they call beefsteak out of it. They would slice it, and they get about 3 slices off each side, a big slice. And Mama cooked it. We eat supper before the storm hit. And then I can remember helping pack the groceries upstairs, the food, everything we had. And some of the clothes, most of the clothes, everything we had put in. And then they took a lot of water. There was a concrete cistern out the back of the house. And they took a lot of water upstairs. And then I was about 4 years old, a little older. My brother was 1 or a little older, I don't know which, not much, because I'm 84, and that was 80 years ago in August. And then it's hard for me to remember it all clear, but I can remember things that happened when I was off and on. And then I can remember us being on the porch, and the water started to coming up, and it went whirling around the house, sort of, before it got to coming up on the porch. And I thought Mama stooped over and caught chicken off of the log that passed by the house. Well, they took that upstairs, and I thought that I know that the water was coming around the house, and then I know that they took us upstairs. My brother had on a little long white dress, and I thought he was going around and around. I thought Mama said, "Don't let him fall." And then they took us upstairs, and they put us on the bed. I heard my daddy say, "Let's go downstairs and chop the floor out." So we went down. They went down there, not us. They laid us in the bed. They left our clothes on, but they took our shoes off, and we laid across the bed. And they went down there and chopped to come up in the house. And then there was a great big old concrete cistern at the back of the house, and a big tree that stood back there, back of the house where the kitchen was. So then, I don't know whether they opened the windows or left them shut. I don't know that. But I do know that then the storm went to getting bad. It was getting later. The later it got, the worse the storm got. I remember that. Puffs of wind coming in the house of rocking thing. Felt like a boat on the water. And then I thought that my daddy was laying there alongside of us, and Mama was up. She was seemed like to me she was walking the floor. And I woke up. I kept waking up. I couldn't sleep. I kept waking up. And it was an awful night. It was terrible. And one time I woke up through the night, and I heard my daddy say, "Did you see that?" I said, "See what?" He said, "That woman." And I said, "No, I never seen nothing." He said, "Well, I did." He said, "I was looking at a woman. She had on a nice dress. She was dressed real nice. She had lots of jewelry on, but she was so dry that she was real dry. So not even her hair was wet. So she was a young woman. So she was standing there. And I thought to myself, I heard him speak of a guardian angel afterwards, that must have been our guardian angel watched over us that night. So many people drowned that night. And we were right on the water. The storm was hitting us real hard, but our house was still there. And Mama said the next day, she said, all that saved it, she said, was the cistern and the tree. She said every time the house would raise up or try to float, she said it seemed like it would bump on that cistern. And it was a big cistern. It was 4 foot under the ground, I heard him say afterwards, and 4 foot out of the ground. And it was a great big large concrete cistern. And I thought that this tree was a big tree. So that kept, every time the house would raise up and hit that cistern and that tree, and it busted the cistern all up. But the cistern was still there. And then I thought the next morning, the water wasn't to the top floor. It had a porch around the bottom and the top upstairs. I thought the water wasn't up to the top, but it was pretty well up. And then after the storm was over, I thought Mama went down about 2 or 3 steps and looked in the house. She said there was a lot of snakes in the house. She said they were up on the windows, they were everywhere. But as the water went out, the snakes went out. And then there was a boat come down. I guess it come from the island. And then they come down and picked us up. We got on the boat from the porch. And then we sailed up to the island. We sailed way up there. All the lower part of her washed away. Water was over it. The top of it was supposed to be about 40 some feet higher than sea level. And on where they took us, I don't remember the house we went to, whose house we went to, and things like that. But I do know we went to high. Lots of people drowned that night at Galveston and other places. Also, I heard them say that they had piled the bodies up. There were so many they couldn't bury them all. They piled the bodies up and put some kind of oil on them and burnt. And they had guards to watch that they didn't take their jewelry. And they would take their jewelry and put it in some place for their people to get, or something like that. And I don't know exactly, but some way like that. And there were lots of stuff that washed up, like furniture, trunks of clothes. Them days they had it, kept clothes in trunks. And lots of things. But for a while they give them back. But then the time come that people would just accidentally run up on them. Well, then they wasn't no good no more. They wasn't worth doing anything with. I'm having to feel my way around because I can't remember so good. And a lot of people got lost from one another. Some of them were drowned, and some of them would be saved, but they couldn't find one another, and they would think that they got drowned in a storm. I know a fella that had a brother that he thought got drowned in a storm, that he come to Highlands years afterwards, and they found one another. Things like that. And I heard about two little children being on a feather bed, and they were held on so tight until they washed up on Smith Point. And they say they put on their best clothes and their jewelry, and they went to the safest places, big bunches. Some prayed, some laughed, and some sung, and some danced till the last. There was some places left there in Galveston because they're still there. Then we went back home, and a few weeks afterwards I fell on a nail, stuck a nail in my knee, and my dad had taken me to Galveston on the boat. They had me taken to Galveston on the boat to the doctor. And when we got there, it seemed like a lot of wreckages, a lot of drift, and it smelled bad. It did, and lots of flies. And I went to the doctor, and he doctored my knee, and we went back home. But it was awful. It was an awful storm. But I still can remember it. And while I'm telling about the storms, when I was a little older, there was a little tidal wave one morning. We went down the bay, crabbing. The sun was shining, and there was no clouds or nothing. And we come back to the house, and I'd just been there a little while when the water went to coming in a big rolls over the beach, out of the beach into the bay. And I thought they had the railroad track, and it looked like a fence coming across. And logs and snakes and everything was just piling up. And it come up around the house about 3 or 4 feet, and then it was the end of it. It spread out. But it left so many snakes and so many old logs and things where we lived then. And if it would have caught us down the bay, and I often thought of that, if you be out on the beach or something, my daddy said, if something in the water happened, disturbance, I often thought it could have been maybe an earthquake or a volcano or something like that. Maybe some little thing happened, or something happened out in the Gulf, out in the ocean. But I don't know what it was. But they do come fast, and they don't give you no much warning. That's the way they do. That's the way that one did. So I told you what I know about it. I'm going to try to tell you about the 1915 storm. It was just before my little girl was born, and I remember it well because we stayed at my mother-in-law's place, and it blowed off of the blocks and things like that, and the water come up pretty high, close to where they lived. But the same house that I was in when I was a little girl, in 1900, washed away that storm, The fellow that owned it said if he was there, he wouldn't run because the house would stand the storms, wouldn't wash it away. But he was there, and his grandson. And there was 3 people taking care of the place. It was a man, his wife, and his daughter. And his daughter was fixing to get married. She had a engagement ring on. And that's the way they found her. And they went upstairs, the man that owned the house and his grandson, and they made a raft. But the house went, and they all drowned it but the woman. They found her in a tree. She had drink water off her hair, where she got her drinking water when it rained. And they found her. She overcome it. And they found the girl later afterwards when they're on the way. They had to identify her was by her ring. And that's what happened to the place that we weathered out in the 1900 storm. One morning we woke up and there was a boat, a big boat, had pulled up to the landing down on the bayou, and had landed there. My father went down there to see who he was, and let him stay.